She Who Awakens by Alina Chamberlain. Depths of Female Sexuality. Chapter: Anatomy, Physiology, and the Science. To understand the depths of female sexuality and orgasmic potential, one must first master the architecture of the body. The female pelvic floor is not merely a physical support system, it is a dynamic, responsive center of vitality, health, and sensation. The trinity of muscular systems. The human body is composed of 3 distinct types of muscle tissue, each governed by different parts of the nervous system. Understanding these differences is the first step in reclaiming control over your intimate health. Cardiac muscle. Found exclusively in the heart, this muscle is involuntary. While we cannot will it to contract, we can influence it through the autonomic nervous system via deep breathing and meditation to lower heart rates during stress. Smooth muscle. This tissue lines our internal organs, such as the uterus, the deeper walls of the vagina, and the blood vessels. It is governed by the endocrine system, hormones, and neurotransmitters. We cannot move these muscles through direct thought. They respond to our emotional state and chemical environment. Skeletal muscle. These are the muscles we can consciously control, such as those in our arms, legs, and, crucially, the pelvic floor. This is the primary focus of intimate gymnastics. By training these muscles, we indirectly improve the health of the smooth muscles and organs they support. The mechanics of muscle state: tension, atrophy, and spasm. A healthy muscle exists in a state of balance. In intimate health, we navigate 2 primary dysfunctions. 1. Spasm and hypertonicity. A spasm is an involuntary, painful contraction. In the pelvic region, this often occurs in high-performance athletes or women carrying heavy physical loads, such as improper weight training. When the pelvic floor is constantly on, without relaxation, it becomes exhausted, leading to pain during intercourse, dyspareunia, and reduced sensation. 2. Atrophy and hypotonicity. Atrophy occurs through disuse. For many women, the pelvic floor becomes a blind spot due to cultural taboos or a sedentary lifestyle. When muscles aren't fed by nerve impulses, blood flow decreases, tissues thin, and the area loses its structural integrity. This often leads to stress incontinence, leaking urine when coughing or jumping, and a numbness during intimacy. The golden rule: a functional muscle must be capable of both a strong contraction, shortening, and a complete, conscious relaxation, lengthening. True orgasmic potential lies in the range between these 2 states. The anatomy of the pelvis and intimate organs. The pelvic floor serves as a living hammock for the internal organs. To understand its function, we must visualize the boundaries: the bony cradle, the sacrum and coccyx, back, the ilium, sides, and the pubic bone, front. These are connected by the pubic symphysis, a cartilaginous disc that allows for slight expansion during childbirth. The occupants: the uterus, bladder, and rectum. The portals: the urethra, the vaginal canal, and the anus. The myth of vaginal layers. A common misconception in intimate training is that the vagina itself consists of layers of skeletal muscle that can be pumped like a bicep. In reality, the vaginal walls are primarily smooth muscle. You cannot move the middle or upper third of the vagina through sheer willpower. However, you can control the vaginal entrance, the first 3 to 5 centimeters, using the skeletal muscles of the pelvic floor. The sensation of pulsing deeper inside is usually achieved through vacuum effects created by specific diaphragmatic breathing techniques and the upward pull of the levator ani. The 2 floors of controlled muscles. Professional intimate gymnastics focuses on isolating 2 distinct layers of the pelvic floor. The deep layer, levator ani. This is the powerhouse muscle. It stretches from the pubic bone to the coccyx. It is responsible for supporting the weight of the organs. If this muscle weakens, the hammock sags, leading to uterine or vaginal prolapse. We use this muscle during bowel movements and to support the pelvic cavity under pressure. The superficial layer, bulbospongiosus muscle. This is the pleasure muscle. It surrounds the vaginal opening and the clitoral bulb. It is rich in nerve endings and is responsible for the grip felt during intimacy. It also supports the urethra. Weakness here is the primary cause of stress incontinence. The relationship between muscles and ligaments. While muscles provide active support, ligaments, like the wide ligament of the uterus, provide passive stability. Think of the uterus as a buoy in water. The ligaments are the anchors, and the pelvic floor muscles are the water level. When the water level, muscular support, drops due to atrophy, the anchors, ligaments, are forced to take the full weight. Over time, ligaments stretch. Unlike muscles, ligaments do not bounce back easily. This is why addressing the first signs of weakness, such as vaginal flatulence or minor leaks, is critical before permanent prolapse occurs. Connecting breath mechanics to intimate health. To unlock the true depths of female orgasmic potential and secure lifelong intimate health, one must look beyond the pelvis and understand the body as an interconnected pressure system. True mastery over the pelvic floor muscles, PFM, is impossible without mastering the respiratory diaphragm. Together, these two muscular structures act as the upper and lower boundaries of a dynamic cylinder that governs intra-abdominal pressure, visceral health, and somatic pleasure. The piston mechanism, the diaphragm and pelvic floor connection. The respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic floor muscles operate in a continuous, involuntary synergy known as a biological piston. As bipedal beings walking upright on Earth, our internal organs do not float in zero gravity. They are constantly subjected to gravitational pull and the shifting pressures generated by our breathing patterns. The space between the respiratory diaphragm at the top and the pelvic floor at the bottom houses your vital digestive and reproductive organs, making their structural alignment deeply dependent on how you breathe. During a natural, unforced inhalation, the dome-shaped respiratory diaphragm contracts and moves downward, expanding the thoracic cavity to draw air into the lungs. As the diaphragm descends, it physically pushes the internal organs downward. In a healthy, functional body, the pelvic floor muscles mirror this movement by expanding, lengthening, and gently descending to absorb the weight of the viscera. Concurrently, the abdominal wall moves outward, protruding slightly without tension to accommodate this shifting internal volume. Conversely, during an exhalation, the process reverses perfectly. The respiratory diaphragm relaxes and ascends back into a dome shape, while the pelvic floor muscles naturally recoil and lift upward, gently supporting the organs as they move back into place. Simultaneously, the abdomen subtly retracts. When this synchronized system is disrupted by chronic stress, poor posture, or incorrect training, the natural support system of the organs fails, setting the stage for pelvic dysfunction, diminished sensation, and anatomical misalignment. The triad of intra-abdominal pressure. Intra-abdominal pressure is the force exerted within the abdominal cavity, dictated by the interactions of the diaphragm, the abdominal wall, the press, and the pelvic floor. In intimate gymnastics, mastering how to manipulate this pressure determines whether an exercise is deeply therapeutic or actively harmful. First, descending pressure, the downward vector. Descending pressure occurs prominently during inhalation when the diaphragm drops, compressing the organs underneath. However, a major structural error occurs when women introduce heavy abdominal bracing or engage their upper abdominals, the press, while attempting pelvic floor exercises. If you habitually hold your stomach in to look thinner or tense your abdominal muscles during intimate gymnastics, you spike the intra-abdominal pressure significantly. Because the tensed abdominal wall blocks outward expansion, the immense downward force has nowhere to go but straight down onto the pelvic floor. If your pelvic muscles are already weak or atrophied, this downward crushing force worsens their condition. In everyday life, this destructive descending pressure is triggered by straining on the toilet, lifting heavy weights improperly, high-impact jumping, or sitting hunched forward. Over the years, chronic exposure to unchecked descending pressure causes the internal organs to succumb to gravity, resulting in uterine, bladder, or vaginal prolapse. Second, ascending pressure, the upward vector. Ascending pressure is the optimal state for restorative pelvic training and intimate conditioning. This occurs during a focused exhalation, where the lungs empty, the diaphragm pulls upward, and the lower abdomen naturally hollows inward toward the spine. Guided by this upward movement, the pelvic floor muscles find an ideal environment to contract and lift effectively, completely free from the crushing weight of the internal organs. Training the pelvic floor during this ascending phase unloads the musculature, allowing for deeper neuromuscular activation, better isolation, and enhanced blood flow. For women experiencing pelvic floor weakness, learning to synchronize their pelvic contractions exclusively with a slow, controlled exhalation ensures that the muscles are built up rather than stretched out. 3. Static pressure, the internal compression. Static pressure is a unique state generated when the respiratory diaphragm moves downward during an inhalation, but the individual simultaneously executes a strong, conscious upward contraction of the pelvic floor muscles. Rather than moving up or down, the internal organs are effectively compressed in the center from both sides. When executed with proper technique and supported by highly conditioned, resilient pelvic floor muscles, static pressure serves as an exceptional internal massage for the reproductive and digestive organs. This compression forces a temporary restriction of blood flow, followed by a massive surge of fresh, oxygenated blood upon release, dramatically optimizing cellular health, local microflora, and tissue elasticity. Critical diagnostic warning. If a woman attempts to create static pressure while possessing weak or untrained pelvic floor muscles, the downward force of the diaphragm will inevitably overwhelm the pelvis. In daily life, unexpected spikes in static pressure occur during coughing, sneezing, or laughing. If the lower lock of the pelvic floor is non-functional, this sudden compression forces the bladder neck open, causing immediate stress urinary incontinence. Therefore, practicing advanced static breathing techniques is strictly contraindicated until a firm foundation of pelvic strength is established. Summary and action plan. To transition from analytical understanding to somatic mastery, keep these foundational rules at the core of your practice. De-link the abdomen from the pelvis. A primary milestone in intimate gymnastics is the ability to squeeze and lift the levator ani and bulbospongiosus muscles while keeping your abdominal wall entirely soft and relaxed. Use your hand on your belly during training to ensure it is not bracing or tightening. Exhale for power, inhale for release. Always couple your active pelvic contractions with a relaxed, deep exhalation to utilize ascending pressure. Allow your pelvic floor to fully lengthen and relax as you inhale. Protect the lower lock. Recognize that symptoms like leaking while sneezing or experiencing vaginal flatulence during physical activity are immediate warning signs that your pelvic floor cannot withstand sudden intra-abdominal pressure changes. Prioritize isolating the bulbospongiosus muscle to secure the urethral closure before attempting complex, vacuum-based breathing practices. By synchronizing the rhythm of your breath with the contractions of your pelvic anatomy, you eradicate the primary cause of organ prolapse, alleviate chronic pelvic congestion, and forge the pristine neurological pathways required to experience profound, full-body orgasmic responses. Discover the secrets to nurturing your lifestyle and love style at Wish for Love. The electronic version of all chapters from the full book She Who Awakens by Alina Chamberlain can be found at wishforlove.org.